Hi everybody, my name is Daniel Krueger, and this is my case study for Module 12. Alright, so Section 1 has summarized the case and established the facts. So who's involved? We have Mr. Keith Sample, who's the principal, Miss Lynn, who is the library media specialist. She is also in charge of the school's computer labs. Miss Williams, who's an experienced teacher, Miss Brandon, who's a new teacher, and Miss Evans, who's the PTA president. The location for this case is St. Regis School. So after 4 months of following Computer Lab's schedule, several teachers approached Miss Lynn with the idea of making copies of software programs for their classroom computers. Miss Lynn agreed. Despite copyright restrictions, Miss Lynn ordered several flash drives for making multiple copies of computer programs selected by teachers. Miss Lynn then distributed the flash drives to Miss Brandon and Miss Williams, who were both third-grade teachers. Miss Williams, the experienced teacher, was delighted, but Miss Brandon, who is new to St. Regis School, raised concerns about the copyright violations. Miss Brandon said that the teachers were not allowed to make copies of commercial computer programs in her old school. Miss Lynn responded, "Well, I don't care what you did in your other school." Given that response, Miss Brandon then went to Mr. Sample's office to notify him that Miss Lynn was making copies of computer programs for the teachers. Mr. Sample, the principal, indicated that this was the first time he was aware of the copying of the computer programs. Mr. Sample then went to see Miss Lynn the next day, who admitted to copying the computer programs. She was very, very proud that she was able to save the school a little bit of money. Mr. Sample informs her of the copyright in violation. Miss Lynn threatens to call the PTA officers and explain how much money her actions are saving the district. Mr. Sample instructs Miss Lynn to collect all copies and stop making other copies. Miss Lynn pleads with Mr. Sample to allow the teachers to continue to use the copied programs. Miss Lynn informs Mr. Sample that the president of the PTA even assisted in making the copies. So Section 2, report any legal or ethical issues. So who has been harmed? Well, if Mr. Sample does not allow the unauthorized use of the copies, the students of the teachers illegally using the programs get harmed because they don't get access to the computer because their access to the computer programs are more limited. If Mr. Sample allows the teachers to use the copied programs, then the entire school district is liable for knowingly violating copyright law. Mr. Sample, Miss Lynn, and the teachers are put into an ethical predicament of obeying copyright law or providing students with more access to computer programs. Section 3. Synthesize exactly what has happened in a single sentence. So here Mr. Sample must decide if he'll ignore copyright law and risk the consequences by continuing to allow teachers to use copied computer programs on classroom computers, or if he'll obey copyright law by not allowing the teachers to use the computer programs on classroom computers. So let's synthesize the facts. For the people involved, we have Keith Sample, who's a third-year building principal. He is well liked by the faculty, staff, and local residents. He worked hard to build that reputation since he is from out of town. Then we have Miss Lynn. Miss Lynn wears multiple hats in the school. She is the library and media specialist. She's also in charge of the computer lab, but she is the one who made the illegal copies of the computer programs at the request of several teachers. We have Mrs. Williams, who's an experienced third-grade teacher. She gladly accepted the copied computer programs from Miss Lynn. And then we have Miss Brandon, who is a new third-grade teacher at St. Regis, but she does have experience at another district. She's the one that informed Miss Sample of the copied computer programs and let him know that this would not fly at her previous district. And then finally we have Miss Evans, who is the PTA president. She's the one that helped Miss Lynn make copies of the computer programs in the school library. As far as the place goes, this whole case takes place in St. Regis School, which is a rural area that is 25 miles away from any large city. It has a student population of 420 students. It has grades kindergarten through 8th grade. There's only 2 teachers in each grade level. The school gains financial support from PTA-sponsored fundraising events each year. And the annual budget is only enough to provide teachers with basic materials, and there's a small amount of money left over to purchase new computers or new software. And then we have the program. Miss Lynn developed a schedule so that each teacher had a scheduled time to use the computer lab for either computer-assisted or computer literacy instruction. All but 3 teachers used the computer lab frequently. Miss Lynn ordered new computer programs based on form feedback from the teachers, and she was asked to copy the newly purchased software programs so that the teachers could install them on their classroom computers. Alright, so section 5 is review and prioritize the info. The situation could be damaging to stakeholders and the community. So let's look at the damage to the stakeholders. Miss Lynn could face consequences for violating copyright law and making the copies. All of the teachers could face consequences for knowingly using the copied materials. Mr. Sample's reputation could be damaged depending on his decision, and the PTA and the school board could face a financial penalty. So consulting the stakeholders, Mrs. Brandon was the one that informed Mr. Sample of the entire situation. Mr. Sample did consult Miss Lynn about the consequences of her actions. However, the school board should be consulted since they most likely already have a copyright policy in place. We should also consult the PTA officers since they help raise money for the school, and this situation could bring about financial consequences. So can I learn more? Yes, I want to know what the current school board policy is on copyright. I also want to know, did anyone read the software's copyright page and understand the licensing restrictions that were printed there? But I do believe that there is enough information to make a decision. So we have a few options. Option 1 is to allow Miss Lynn to continue to distribute the copied computer programs so that each teacher can illegally install them on their classroom computers. The consequences of this, the school could face financial penalty if caught. If that happens, the community could lose trust in the school to make ethical decisions, and then each of the teachers would place in an ethical predicament, like Miss Brennan was, of like violating copyright law or providing students with more access to computer programs. Option 2 is the most extreme. It's to confiscate the copies of it's for Mr. Sample to confiscate the copies of the computer programs and report Miss Lynn's actions to the school board, also notifying the software developers and the school's attorney of the copyright violation. In this scenario, Miss Lynn faces legal, professional, and financial discipline. The students get less access to the computer programs, and the teachers start to form a bad opinion about Mr. Sample. There is an intermediate option, though, and that's for Mr. Sample to confiscate the copied computer programs, and then offer training to school staff and PTA officers to reflectively evaluate, communicate, and implement laws, rights, policies, and regulations about copyright to promote student success and adult success and well-being. The only consequence of this option is that students get less access to computer programs. So let's look at the pros and cons of each option. Option 1, if we continued to allow the distribution of the copied computer programs, the school does save some money by not having to buy extra copies of the computer program, and the students get more access to the computer programs. But there are financial consequences if the school is caught. The community doesn't trust the school to make ethical decisions, and teachers are placed in an ethical predicament. Option 2 was to confiscate the copies and report Miss Lynn's actions. The pros is that the other teachers don't have to break any ethical codes, and the school district doesn't have to worry about facing any financial consequences. However, Miss Lynn does face financial consequences. The students do get less access to the computer programs, and the teachers form a bad opinion about Mr. Sample. Those are all the cons of this option. And then we have our intermediate option, which was to confiscate the copied materials and offer training. The pros is that this is going to increase awareness of copyright laws, regulations, and policy. The school does not face financial penalty, and this could improve school policy. The only con is that students do get less access to the computer programs. So all things considered, I think that the intermediate option is the best choice, where Mr. Sample confiscates the copied computer programs and then offers training. So finally, we need to implement this decision. So to implement the decision, Mr. Sample needs to follow a few steps. He first needs to carefully evaluate the copyright policies that were written or adopted by the school board. He also needs to look at the software manufacturer's copyright policies as well. He then needs to prepare a presentation to communicate and implement laws, rights, and policies and regulations about copyright to promote student and adult success and well-being. He should invite the teaching staff and the PTA officers to the presentation. During the presentation, he should acknowledge that Miss Lynn and Miss Brennan were both placed in difficult situations. Again, it was Miss Lynn who was asked by teachers to make the copies. And it was Miss Brennan who thought that she was uncomfortable, ethically speaking, in using the copyrighted programs. But each of these individuals did what they thought was best. After the presentation, Mr. Sample should ask for input from the teaching staff and the PTA officers about the existing copyright policies. If the input suggests that changes need to be made to the copyright policy, Mr. Sample should request a meeting with the school board. Alright guys, thank you very much. Bye.